What is the story that strangers, waiters, bus passengers, cashiers, etc. probably tell that involves you? Probably bus driver / passengers. I was running after the bus. Driver stopped and I face planted right in front of everyone. I got back up, lost my footing on the step to get into the bus and fell backwards and hit my head on the pavement. The driver dropped me at the hospital. One evening I was having some friends over for a fire and some pizza, so I ordered the pizza, specified for the driver, to bring out back, and then I went outside to get the fire together before my friends arrived. I started chopping the wood and was burning up, so I went inside to put on some gym shorts. At this point I realized all my shorts were in the wash and I saw a skirt of my girlfriend's laying on the floor. Forgetting about the pizza man coming, I just put on the skirt and nothing else and went outside to chop wood in it, feeling much less hot in it. After about 10 minutes of chopping wood shirtless and in my pretty skirt, I hear what the fuck and turn around sweaty holding my axe with a skirt on to see the pizza man just starting at me. Needless to say, it was a little awkward. One time in high school I accidentally ended up taking a Latin test when I'm not in a Latin class. I was too embarrassed to leave the classroom, so I pretended to think hard about each question and then just wrote random answers. I figured I could just turn in the test and leave without anyone realizing until after I left that I wasn't in that class. Except when I went to turn it in, the teacher happened to look down at my paper, looked up at me, and realized I wasn't in the class, then looked down at my answers again and just said, "Oh." Never in my life have I felt so much disappointment aimed at me than that one. Oh. I was so embarrassed, but I like to think that teacher now has a funny story about the idiot who came into the wrong class and took the test anyways. Right as I left the grocery store, the skies opened up and water poured down. I ran to my car in a nearly blinding rain, grabbed the driver's side door, and yanked the handle. It didn't open. Shit. As I got soaked, I yanked and yanked and yanked, but it wouldn't open. It was locked, but I didn't lock it. After a few seconds I heard a scream, looked inside the car, and saw an elderly woman sitting in the passenger seat with a terrified expression on her face. WTF. Then I looked one row over in the lot and saw my car calmly waiting for me. I had run up to an identical car to mine and tried to yank the door open. I'm sure that in the following years, that old woman repeatedly told the story of the time some crazy guy tried to break into her car and kidnap her. The poor woman, forced to sit next to me on the Bolt bus from Nick to Philly in October 2013, probably still dreams of me. You see, the night before I had smashed my face into the sharp edge of a coffee table during a drunken hookup on the floor of my friend's apartment. I almost but not quite put my teeth clean through the thin piece of skin under the lip, but above the chin. Being sort of young and definitely drunk, we decided to not go to the hospital, rather stick a large band-aid on my face and hope for the best. I also had what turned out to be the beginning stages of bronchitis. I had to get on the bus with a hangover, a cough rivaling that of a Detention Street child, and a cut on my face that would open and bleed profusely each time I moved my mouth. I also woke up late for the bus, so there was no time to even try to clean up my appearance. This poor lovely woman sits down next to me. I smile at her in an attempt to convince her I'm human and alive, and I promptly start gushing blood from my face. I then begin to panic, which sets off a coughing fit. Blood gets into my mouth, and despite my best efforts to cover my mouth, the chaos of the situation prevailed, and I basically sputtered aerosolized blood all over a little shared area of the bus. There was nowhere for this sweet angel of a woman to go, and so she was forced to sit next to me for the whole 3-hour drive. The pressure of this horrifically awkward interaction proved too much for me, and so I decided my best course of action was to knock myself out with cough medicine and wait for either death or my ride to pick me up at the bus stop. Mercifully, sleep took me after 10 minutes of determined silence from both of us. I made it home and spent the following week in bed. I also have a scar on my chin. Was at the office supporting a major project we had done on our finance department overnight. I'm in it. After the important stuff was done, I went to the bathroom to take a shit. Was a long coffee-filled night, so my stomach was feeling it. Sit down, start doing my business, and someone else comes and sits in the only other stall in there. Nice shoes, I think to myself. I finish up before the other person, so I wipe and get up. Our office has auto flushing toilets, so it flushes. Clogged. NBD, I think to myself, will just go wash my hands and tell facilities. Bend down to pull my pants up. Infrared picks me up and flushes again. At this point the water comes within 1/8 of an inch from the rim. I'm getting nervous. There is tons of splatter shit floating in that devil's brew of water and it's right at the edge of disaster. At this point I do my best James Bond impersonation to try and slide out of the stall without being noticed by the villainous toilet lasers. I successfully make it out. Woo. Grab the stool handle to close the door and I hear the sound I had so desperately tried to avoid. Flush. I instinctively say, oh my god. Auto flush. Shit infused water starts covering the floor in all directions, and fast. As I say this, I see Mr. Nice Shows lift his feet up in the air to keep them safe, like the floor is lava, and yells what the fuck. I blurt out going to get help BRB, and leave him, trapped in his stall, holding his feet off the ground, while taking a shit of his own. Walk downstairs, find the front desk person, and say someone flooded the bathroom on the second floor. It's disgusting in an off-put tone, to try to cover my tracks. I've always imagined that story being retold by Mr. Nice Shoes. When I worked in a retail store, I was helping a disabled lady in a motorized wheelchair go around the store and fill her basket. At the end she thanked me and said goodbye, and as I put the basket on her lap, I placed it on the joystick, and she shot back at full acceleration into a clothes rail. She was understandably shook, and so was I. So I said bye, and retreated slowly backwards into the children's department. I paid for a lady's shopping when both her cards got declined, and she started crying, and putting things back. Her daughter had a magazine, and she started crying and asking why I pretended that she had dropped a £20 note and handed it to her so she could pay. I've been there and know how it feels. Anyway, about a month or so later, my brother-in-law, whose girlfriend worked in the supermarket, started telling the story to me and my wife about this guy who paid for the shopping. So I'm that guy the till girls in Morrison's tell stories about. Woohoo. 2 years ago I stopped at a car wash. I had in one of my pockets 4 €100 bills. In the other pocket I had €3 to give the guy as a tip. I was talking at the phone. I wasn't paying attention. Put the money in the tip jar and left. After 2 hours, when I got home, I realized that I only have €3 in my pocket. So the guy received a €400 tip that day. I'm sure that he told everyone about the crazy guy that gave him a huge tip. Was riding shotgun in my own Jeep Cherokee, and I had my backpack on the floor at my feet. I was in a big rush to get into the bank, so as soon as he parked, I pushed open the door and hopped right out. Except that my feet were somehow through one strap of the backpack, so they didn't come with me. I just sort of plopped out, landing flat on my back with just my feet still in the car, in a crowded parking lot of a bank on a busy street at rush hour. My BF was laughing too hard to help me up, as were many passerby. But the people still talking about this 12 years later are my coworkers, because I strained both Achilles with this agile maneuver, so my ankles and feet swelled up, and I couldn't fit them into shoes for over a week. Had to wear flip-flops in November and limp around the office in socks the whole time. Have never been able to live it down with my friends and family. Hey, remember that boy who accidentally set himself on fire with matches in the grocery store? I had grabbed an ass of matches in the gas station before my dad took us shopping, unbeknownst to him. Walking around on the matchbooks came undone and rubbed a match head against the friction strip of another matchbook. Flame on. I smothered the flames, suffering an incinerated pocket and mild burn to my thigh, but dad gave me a 3rd-degree burn to my ass when we got home. I had an endoscopy and colonoscopy unsedated in the same appointment. Almost every physician and nurse in that hospital came to see. And when I was in recovery, so many asked me questions. I'm well known there. I called recently to get my records and the receptionist said, "You're the girl who did it unsedated." In Japan, when you want a waiter you say sumimasen. Well, I ask my friend who is closer to the view of our waitress to turn and say sumimasen. He turns and there is a guy right there who he kinda quietly and directly says it to. It wasn't our waitress, but he responds, "Yes, what would you like?" in English. Food gets ordered, asks us where we are from, and welcomes us to Japan. Then he walks back to his table. My friend got another customer of the place to order food for us and went back to his table of like 15 coworkers. We laughed when we realized what happened. They laughed when he told his table. It was a good time. First time I went to India I had purple hair. Went to the zoo because why not? Every kid there didn't want pictures of the lions or the tigers or the monkeys or anything. They wanted pictures with the white guy with purple hair. I'm sure there are pictures of me surrounded by smiling kids in several houses in India. My friends and I went camping up in the mountains one summer. We all took shrooms and our trip sitter drove us, high as a kite, and bringing along the trusty old bong, to this beautiful beach by a lake. Because it was legal to do so there and just because we felt like it, we all took off our bikini tops. I'm from the tropics and this lake was formed from glacial water, so I didn't run into swim and splash around as the rest of my friends did. I probably would have cramped and drowned had I tried. It's the middle of summer. There are people everywhere at this promo vacation location and my group wasn't particularly well hidden. I'm bong sitting and hitting while my friends splash around and dunk themselves in the crystal clear icy lake. A nice family walks by while my friends are a ways into the water. I'm still on dry land, both tits out, off my mind from these particularly potent mushrooms, trying not to piss myself laughing at what these strangers saw. A tiny ethnic girl, half naked, hunched over a glass bong, trying and failing to hide it with her body, crying with laughter. When I was growing up my mother drove Cadillacs. My grandfather had been really sick and was relearning how to drive. Keep in mind he was in his late 60s and in fairly good shape. He convinced his daughter-in-law, my mother, to let him and myself, a young 4-year-old, to go pick up my father from work. I was in the backseat in my car seat when his foot slipped at a stoplight. He ran through the front of a store completely destroying the front of it. I slept through the entire thing, didn't wake up until my firefighter pulled me out of my car seat. That's when I discovered my love for sleep and my ability to sleep through almost anything. At my big Tesco a few years ago, I was a uni student, so times were hard. Tesco has an offer for 1 kilogram of Cathedral City which was £6, but had been reduced by £1. I was a cheeseaholic, so I thought it was a pretty good deal. I got to the counter, and instead of being reduced by £1 it was reduced to £1. I went back and bought 10 kilograms worth. Sounds boring. But when I went to vacation in Croatia we ordered one of every pancake on the menu to eat as dinner. In the Netherlands, eating pancakes for dinner is normal. The pancakes were listed under the dessert section though. I think we had 6 each and the waiter had a smile from ear to ear with every pancake he brought us. We gave him a big tip, even when it's not customary to do so in Europe. Just a small tip will do most of the time. I flew home the other week with a nasty cold. All was well and good until the descent. My ears didn't pop. The whole way down I was crying and writhing in agony, grasping at my face and pulling my ears trying desperately to make them pop. In amongst it all I noticed the people in my row were looking at me like I was possessed and leaning as far away from me as possible. Well, I have weird reactions to coming out of anesthesia. I always forget where I am, and if a relative isn't in the room with me I panic and try to escape. When I had my wisdom teeth removed, all 4 were coming in horizontally. I had to be put completely out. I told the nurse, dentist, and husband that he needed to be in the room with me when I woke up, or I might try to fight people. They all 3 laughed it off, because how much damage could I really do? I woke up, and the only person in the room was a male nurse. I panicked, smashed the guy's face into the wall while he had his back turned, and ran out of the office, down the street into an IHOP screaming that someone was after me. Apparently my husband was in the bathroom at the time. Both the dentist office and the IHOP called the police. By far the most embarrassing thing I have ever been through in my life.